I'm very excited for this video. Do you ever find yourself sitting there and thinking about the worst possible case scenario? Like an argument you had earlier that night that just got really heated, or ruminating on if your girl is gonna cheat on you. You almost indulge in thinking thoughts that strip you of your peace of mind. From addictions to shallow relationships to just not feeling good about you, yourself, or the world, all of these are symptoms of the core issue that is showing its head. The core issue being mental health. Poor mental health handicaps your potential. And probably like you, most people don't even realize how bad theirs is. I was just kind of sitting there quietly listening to music one day as I was driving to school, and out of nowhere, I just paused the music and I tried to take a step back and observe the thoughts that I was thinking. And I realized that what my brain was automatically scrolling through, these thoughts that just popped into my head that I would ruminate on, were horrible. They were lustful and insecure and stressed and prideful thoughts. And previously, I didn't even realize that I was thinking them. Not only was this a large source of most of the suffering in my life, but it was also a symptom of a deeper issue. Process of going from what my mind was in the car to having your brain produce automatic good thoughts is the process of improving your mental health. It's not gay or feminine or something to improve your mind. If your brain is automatically generating negative thoughts, you are not operating at your highest potential. Continuing in that way will handicap your success. But I'm gonna run through my 7-step framework that has genuinely made a real and positive impact on my mental health. Okay, so let's rewind to the story I just told. Something that was really powerful that moment relied on was that I was able to take a step back and observe my thoughts. That skill of being able to take a step back and observe what you are thinking is called mindfulness. In that moment, I was able to drop back, and with the thoughts running through my head, I was able to choose which ones I wanted to identify with, which thoughts that I wanted to absorb into how I saw myself. That's the power of mindfulness. Mindfulness is going to be the foundation, the key to improving your mental health. And there are so many studies talking about how mindfulness and what I'm about to explain upgrades your mental health. It's not even funny. There's so many, you can go read them. But from hearing what I just described, you might be thinking that mindfulness kind of sounds like a superpower. And although it is that helpful, it is a skill that can be developed through a very specific practice. That is the practice of meditation. When I first heard about meditation, I was pretty hesitant because I'm a Christian and I didn't know if there were any negative spiritual implications to meditation. Also, it just kind of sounded weird. But this form of meditation is not some spiritual exercise, it's training focus. Basically, you find a comfortable place to sit. Usually you start with your eyes closed. And to start, it's really helpful to choose something to focus on. Whether that's focusing on breathing in and breathing out, your breath, or that's focusing on the sensation of having a face of your body. You want to choose something to focus on. That's step 1. Eventually, you're going to lose focus. That's step 2. When you lose focus, and this is the real act of meditation, you realize you've lost focus, and then you refocus. That 4-step cycle is mindfulness-based meditation. What that trains you to do is to be able to direct your conscience to be focusing on one thing, training your control of the stream of focus. But just as importantly, it's training the skill of observing your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. That's really one of the biggest realizations you'll have when you start meditating. In the same way that if you go next to a pier or a bridge and you look over the stone wall and there's a 100-foot drop into water, part of you is like, you should do it. You should jump. You should jump into the water. Just jump. But you don't. And it's a really good illustrative moment to show you that even though you think something, even though you have a desire, an emotional inclination, an intrusive thought, it isn't you. You can choose to detach yourself from that. And that's going to be huge when you're taking a step back and looking at all your thoughts like that and realizing that you can choose to identify with the positive thoughts and detach from the negative ones. My friend Kenny has this example that your thoughts are like a river, and the goal is to observe the river and observe the waves lapping. You don't want to immerse yourself in the river. You don't want to become part of it. I've been meditating for like 863 days or something like that, and although I've had ins and outs of being consistent and having high volume, it has completely altered my mind. In this book, Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives by Elder Thaddeus of Vitovnica, he quotes Saint Isaac the Syrian, who says, preserve your inner peace at any cost. Do not trade your inner peace for anything in this world. Make peace with yourself, and heaven and earth will make peace with you. I went from my mind automatically generating these negative thoughts to getting to the point where I could catch my thoughts, which gave me control. But what that practically looks like, that control, is that you can catch what you're thinking about, and if it's negative, if it's perverse, if it's not beneficial to you, you can choose the mental energy that you are spending thinking about that thing to be spent on something else. One time recently, I was sitting at my desk and I was struggling because I was having urges for bad habits. And I tried this method, and it might sound stupid, but it is scientifically backed. John Assaraf in his book Inner Size talks about science behind the concepts a little bit. I was having these urges, I was having these negative thoughts. I took a step back and I decided I was gonna feel the physical effects of the state of my mind. And once I took a step back, I realized I felt this weight, this literal tension on my chest. And so feeling that, I kind of coined this term recently that has really hugely benefited me, which is that when I catch myself with this tension on my chest, even if I don't feel like depressed, I'm not showing the signs of poor mental health, but I take a step back from all of the stimulation and all my thoughts, and I realize that over the day, there's just been this tension that has built. I whip out this little pocket notebook, and in a bullet list, I write down everything that's making me stressed or anxious, or that's just generally taking up a substantial amount of my mental bandwidth. I take a step back, reflect on it, and then I box what I can control, recognize what I can't control, and I process through that, and then I cross it out because I can't control it. And this method does two things. I literally can't stress this enough. This is such a game changer for me. I just whipped out this pocket notebook one day and decided to do this, and it has so hugely impacted me. It almost feels like a cheat code because it's so simple, but it's so helpful. Okay, the two things it does, it clearly defines everything that was going on in my head, which kind of immediately reduces the tension because there is no unknown. It's all admitted to myself, and especially when it's on paper and clearly defined, it's way less serious. It's never that deep. You look at it and you're like, oh, I was tense all day because I was worried, and this has actually happened. I was tense all morning because I was worried about going to Starbucks later and I didn't know how to order a specific size. I don't know what the sizes were. And so I had this tension built up of thinking about walking in and not knowing what to say. That tension alone was causing me all this distress and procrastination. But then you write it out and you're like, oh, that's what's bothering me. But the second thing it does is also just as useful, which is that it takes all these jumbled thoughts, condenses them down into just the thoughts that I can control. And then it naturally makes a to-do list, an actionable steps list. All of these things, these are the issues, box them in, define them. That's my to-do list. It becomes practical, it becomes tangible. And when something's practically able to be solved, that gives you control, that turns the locus of control inwards, an outward locus of control. That life happens to you, that the cause of everything is external to you. An inward locus of control is the belief that you are the sole cause of what's happening in your life. You want to be able to turn that locus of control inwards to recognize a responsibility, but also a sense of control, because this opens the door to change. And that's hopeful, that's exciting. This broader philosophy about focusing on what you can control and not focusing about what you can't is really the key to being productive even when you don't feel good. The philosophy of Stoicism, and this is the Noah paraphrase, but essentially states, forget what you can't control, focus only on what you can control, and relentlessly take responsibility for it. I have this book right here, Selected Discourses by Epictetus. Then test it by those rules that I've taught you, and first by this, the chief test of all. Does it fall within my control, or does it not? Is it up to me, or is it not? If it's not in your power to determine the outcome, be ready to say that it means nothing to you. I first learned about this philosophy from a teacher of mine, and when he first introduced it to me, I had a critique that you might have, which is that it's great and all, hypothetically, to say, I'm just gonna think about what I can control, but when you're in the moment, your mom just died, it doesn't actually do much. It doesn't solve the issue. It doesn't take away the suffering. It seems just kind of like an idealistic, naively optimistic thought to say, oh, I'll just focus on what I can control. But what I came to find out through doing it is that it's not about reducing the suffering. It will alleviate some of the suffering, but that's not what it's about. Stoicism, in my broader worldview, the more dominating worldview for my life, Christianity, both promise suffering. Not suffering isn't a part of this deal of life. Like I touched on previously, the practical element is what you are putting your energy into. What is the best thing you can do? What is the most productive move you can make in this moment? It's about what's good. It's about what's productive in the moment under these circumstances. The alternative is focusing on what you can't control, which is absurd. It's letting more suffering be induced upon yourself by focusing on stuff that hasn't happened, that will never happen, stuff that you can't control, outcomes that you're nervous about that you can't control. It's like lighting yourself on fire. It's suffering for no reason. And it's for sure not productive, because that energy you're spending about worrying, about being anxious, could be spent on something productive, could be turned towards good thoughts, could be turned towards actionable thoughts. It's not about not suffering. And this philosophy has truly helped my mental health. Not merely for what I just mentioned, but also that it's okay to suffer. It's okay to not feel good. There are going to be times where you're going to be nervous or anxious, and that's warranted. That's okay. What it comes down to is not letting this be a repeated pattern, not spiraling your self-image and your identity, and taking responsibility for what you can control and being productive in spite of suffering. Quickly, so far we've talked about how to deal with the bad. But I want to talk about something that removes the bad, which is LAR, limit and refine your inputs. Limit and refine. This train of thought kind of started with me a few years ago when my friend and I stopped listening to music on our ride to the gym together. Then we stopped listening to music while we were working. And we did this because we realized that everyone around us was constantly listening to music. And my friend said a really great line, which is, it's really hard to process your own thoughts and emotions when all you're doing is listening to someone else's thoughts and emotions. So then we took it a step further and started to refine what we listen to. And now I do that today periodically. And whenever I'm doing that and I tell my friend, he'll say the same phrase, garbage in, garbage out. I'll go through and I'll take off the songs that just don't have good content or a bunch of swears or whatever. But this is important because your inputs have an outsized effect on your mental state and health. You want to radically remove bad inputs. So that's really bad stuff like excessive video game use, pornography, content that needlessly and kind of addictively puts you into bad states of mind, politics or horror content or whatever. And I'm not saying those things are bad inherently, but again, those in excess. But also, this is the limiting. You want to be wary of not just bad content, but content that's not useful. As St. Paul says in the New Testament, all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. And this is really important because your actions come from your thoughts, and who you are comes from your actions. And so your thoughts have an outsized impact on your mental health. And in the same book, Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives, Elder Thaddeus goes so far as to say, don't even let yourself think any negative thoughts. And then this same example is used in psychocybernetics when a guy for 30 days just decided, I'm not going to think any negative thoughts. And by the end of it, he didn't believe how happy he was. Because with mindfulness, this is a real thing that you can do. Anytime you get a negative thought, you can just choose to think about something else. Choose to not identify with it and put your energy into something else. And ideally, you make that part of your identity. I am not someone who thinks bad thoughts. A greedy thought pops in my mind. That's not who I am. I don't think bad thoughts. And so as you grow in mindfulness, don't allow yourself to indulge in bad thoughts. And that's really what it is. It's indulging. It's easy and it's tempting, especially when it's justified. Someone legitimately wrongs you, and so the anger is justified, and it's easy. You're indulging in that anger. But again, it may be permissible, but it's not beneficial. In a similar vein, a lot of these negative thoughts don't just stem from something negative per se, but a complete misunderstanding of reality. Every situation is an opportunity. All suffering is an opportunity. Sounds horrible for me to say it, especially if you're someone in deep suffering, but that's the case. In this book, Unseen Warfare by St. Nicodemus and Theophan the Recluse, they touch on the fact that God permits the testing of his soldiers. Through those trials is how you are refined. Suffering in life is an opportunity to grow in skills, to grow in character, to grow in your story. And so the reframing of how you look at situations, even if they're not pleasurable, especially if they're suffering, is huge. Finally, really quickly, this is an incredible way to kind of do everything we talked about in this video. You need to be journaling. I'm gonna give you 3 ways to journal, and just start doing one of them, and I promise you'll see results. Relish in your wins. When you do something good that you want to identify with, that you want more of in who you are, relish in it. Write it down. Write how proud you are. Write how you felt when it happened. Write how it contributes to your goals. Write how it contributes to where you want to go in life. Relish in your wins. Notice and recognize when you fail. Understand what to do to not make that same mistake again, and then promptly move on. Your failures are in the past. Continuing to let that failure affect you, especially by failing continuously after that and binging, the binge fallacy, is further identifying with the failure. So when you fail, recognize it, understand why it was negative, understand how to move forward productively, and then move on. And one of the biggest ones is practice gratitude. Write down 3 things that you're grateful for. It's that you're grateful for, experiences, not material things per se, and feel that gratitude for that thing. Journaling has completely and utterly changed my life. And if you want to learn how to use it to change yours, click on this video right here. I hope this video brought you value. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.